Hello, everyone, and welcome to part two of the latest game design Fragments and Crystals podcast. In this episode, we will discuss chosen equipment and collections, both of which are fresh and a work in progress. So, we hope you enjoy the alpha. As always, I have David Grusha, David Delsray, and Mark Gilbert with me, and would like to start my first question with what exactly is chosen equipment and how is it tied to fragments?
There is essentially two types of equipment in the game. There are equipment for workers and troops. These are items that are used as part of their training process in order for them, to actually get to that level of troop. It is consumed in the process, and you are then get that troop, or you then get that worker at a kind of an advanced level. Chosen equipment is completely different to that. Chosen equipment is more like an equipment system from any other kind of role play game or like equipment based game, whereby they are individual pieces that fill into slots on each chosen. Now, the chosen themselves have stats. At the moment, we have 5 different stats for the chosen, which are power, skill, endurance, leadership, and intelligence. Now, each of these 5 different skills affects the game and a particular area of the game. For example, things like leadership are about things like leading armies. So chosen who are more inclined towards the combat side of the game will have a high leadership stat, which allows them to gain bonuses to the troops that they're leading. A high intelligence stat would be for a chosen who is more into potentially the research side of things, or more anything with the more advanced, or potentially the magic sides of the game. Something with power can be something along the lines of gathering and like physical strength side of the game. So each one of these stats will boost how the chosen is used within the game. That is seen through the chosen's abilities. Now, as the chosen stat goes up, the effect of their ability goes up as well. So the point of the equipment is to essentially boost the stats of the chosen, which then leads to stronger abilities, which then leads to a greater impact in the game.
Cool. So, but how do fragments come into play here? Do fragments do anything for this
Yes.
equipment?
So fragments are used in the production process of chosen equipment. So at the moment, there are 5 rarities of chosen equipment that we're looking at. The lower rarities of uncommon and rare do not use fragments, but as soon as you go to epic or higher equipment, fragments are required as part of the kind of production process.
Okay, great. So it's literally an ingredient,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It's an
Mhm.
ingredient.
But do we know how many fragments are needed for each equipment to be upgraded?
No, not at this time.
Okay.
This is this is one of those things that will be definitely a part of how the whole of fragment scaling, how quickly we determine fragments should be gained from gameplay, as well as how many chosen we expect a person to have, how many pieces of equipment that we expect them to have. Uh, just one small point though on chosen equipment. Chosen equipment is intended to be useful for a long time. So this is not meant to be something that is useful, for example, for the first era of the game. And as soon as the second era comes out, it's thrown away and replaced with something else. The chosen equipment is meant to be a very high level of cost investment and research investment to be able to make it. But what you end up with is a piece of equipment for that chosen that can be used for a very long time across multiple eras as well.
Okay. So that's a lot of usage for it.
Oh yeah, I mean they are very expensive in chosen equipment, and a chosen will require multiple pieces as well. Again, like other games, there will be a number of slots that you can fill. So, for example, there will be a head slot or a chest slot. We don't have an example of how many we have right now, uh, so we're certainly not talking about 20 or 30 slots. For example, for a chosen, it's probably more like 4 to 6 sort of range. But you will need to make a piece of equipment for each one of those slots in order to maximize the effect of of your chosen. And it's up to you as to which rarity of equipment you make. You could quickly fill out the slots by making uncommon or rare equipment. The stats won't be the best, but at least you've got something in those slots. Or would you go kind of spend a bit more time in making an epic or a legendary piece of equipment? um, these these pieces are significantly more expensive than the one before it. The way we are structuring the sprees for crafting is essentially every time you go up one rarity, you go up a whole tier of extra materials. So, going from a rare to an epic, the epic is going to be more than twice as expensive to make as a rare piece.
Okay, that's great. So, since you said like we have like only a few places that you can put this equipments in for a chosen, so that means if a player has more than one chosen, that means they will have to have a lot more equipment, right?
Correct. And this is, again, just for clarity, this is for both founders and non-founder chosen. They all can use equipment.
You just answered my next question. I just want to ask you, like, uh, is this gonna be only applied to founders, or any other chosen, future chosen can also be included into this, like having equipment and like getting people to burn their fragments for it?
No, anyone will be able to use them. Sorry, any chosen will be able to use them.
Okay, great. So, since the discussion is about equipment and equipment actually is upgradable, do these chosen equipment come with upgradability as well? Or if so, like, do these upgrades also need fragments as ingredient?
Uh, so we are currently looking into two different methods for upgrading. I kind of touched on one earlier with the idea of using crystals to kind of augment the piece of equipment as well. The other one we're looking at is more of like a general stat increase. Um, it's still very early days on these, but both of the kind of methods are looking towards potentially using fragments as well. So fragments in the crystal version the fragments be turned into crystals, and the crystal will be placed in the actual equipment itself. In the other method, they would be used along as a material in its upgrade process.
Okay, so even more ways to burn frags.
Oh yeah, I mean, we want this is part of our goal to make sure that fragments are a constant, ongoing need for the player base as a whole, and what type of equipment you make is very much based on the type of chosen you have and the type of gameplay that you are playing. So if you decide to be someone who's focusing a lot on the gathering side, you'll have a lot of chosen who are focusing on gathering. They will have abilities that boost your gathering, either gathering speed or the types of resources you're getting. Then you will be focusing on equipment that has the stats that boost those particular types of abilities as well. So, for example, if a gathering chosen is likely to need the power stat and the endurance stats because it's gathering. So you wouldn't make equipment with the intelligence stat because it's no use for them. You'd be making equipment that boosts the stats that are most useful to that type of chosen. And that comes in to kind of another part of the crafting process, is that the crafting process for the chosen equipment is not random. So you can decide what the stats are for the piece of equipment you're going to be making, and you have complete control over that. There will be a number of different recipes that have particular, what we're calling core materials. So based on the types of materials you put into it, you will get a piece of equipment with a particular set of stats. So if you want to make a bow, if you put in one particular material, that bow can end up with power. If you put in a different type of material, that bow could end up with skill. If you put in another particular, bow could end up with leadership. So there are lots of bows, there are lots of stats, but what stats you get are very much up to you based on the materials you put into it as part of the crafting process. The other parts of it will be very much fixed. So, for example, the fact you are making a bow means it will use wood. So that side of things, because it's a bow, will be fixed. There's a magic enchantment part that will always be fixed. And there are a number of items that you must get from the world as well. So these 3 out of 4 parts will always be fixed. The fourth part is the way that you determine what the stats have. And this is one of the ways that we want to make sure that players work with each other. So the world items will be drops. The drops will be coming from combat centric areas of the game. The reinforcement everything will be coming very much from the gathering side because you'll need very, very specific materials. Whereas the magic enhancement will coming very much from the production side of things. So if you want to make chosen equipment, you will need to leverage all of the 3 major ways of playing the game to make chosen equipment.
That's that's a lot of information,
Yeah,
right?
sure. I mean, do you have any follow-up questions for it?
Mhm. Yeah, but now I have a question regarding the same things that you mentioned. Like, let's say, for example, I have a bow and I added, let's say, leadership to it. Now I want to like change my role and become, I don't know, a gatherer. So can I change it, or is it when I actually fuse something with the bow, it is forever fused, and I have to create another equipment for it?
No. Yeah. Once you've made a piece of equipment, that's it. You can break equipment, and you can get things out of it, which is called Nexa essence. Nexa essence is used in the creation of equipment, but we expect the major source of Nexa essence to be from essentially recycling world drops that you get from the combat side of things. Um, but if you don't, yeah, if you make a piece of equipment you no longer want, you can then recycle it into essence as well, so that you can still have a use out of it. It will also
Okay.
gain some kind of materials as well. So, based on the type of equipment it is, you will gain some kind of resources. As for example, you'll get wood out of a bow or iron
Okay.
out of a sword.
Okay, so it's either like breaking it into different pieces and like getting some stuff out of it, or like creating a totally new equipment with the role that I wanted to have.
Yeah, or I mean, alternatively, just give it to a different one you've chosen.
Oh yeah. Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So
So,
yeah, we're not looking to bind uh, equipment to a chosen, but we are looking to bind it to your account. So once you make a piece of equipment, you can choose to sell it at that point, or you can choose to equip it. Once it's been equipped on any chosen, then it's bound to you at that point.
okay, so it will be bound to the
So again,
chosen. Do you mean?
well, no, not that specific chosen. It's bound to your account.
Oh, okay, okay.
So if you want to switch it between another chosen, you're completely free to do that. But what you can't do is then take it off and trade it to another person. So it's we want there to be a very kind of deliberate step in this process. Is I'm making chosen equipment to sell. Cool. Okay. I get all the materials. I buy them off other people. I go into the world. I hunt down the parts, and I make a very specific piece of equipment, and then I put it onto the market and I sell it. That's fine. And again, we're looking potentially for these to be mintable as well, because the fact they are a very defined thing without randomness in it. So you can go out in the world, you can make these things, you can then sell it to someone else. The moment it is then equipped by any chosen, it's then bound to your account. But at that point, the only thing you can do is trade it between your chosen to use on something else, or essentially break it to turn it into usable materials.
I understand definitely. I mean, I remember something that I used to play World of Warcraft back in the day. So there were some items that I could trade, but the moment I actually put it on my character, it would be soul bound to my account. So to my character. So that means only I could use it. So this is something of a process like that, right?
Yeah, except it's bind on account rather than bind on character.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have just one character, so I don't know how it works. But yeah, you're right then. Okay, cool. Thank you for explaining all these questions and giving some and giving a lot of like detailed answer regarding the equipment. But now my next question is about collections and the benefit they provide and how fragments are tied into it.
So collections are the kind of what we're essentially, I suppose they can be likened to wonders from other games. They are the ultimate target for what you want to do in a particular era. So a collections are housed in a museum building. Everyone can have a museum building on their land, and anytime you make an item or as part of collections, they are displayed in the museum. Um, the point of collections is to give you a target to make for that era, because once that era is over, you can no longer make that particular item. So the like chosen equipment, they're expensive, and like chosen equipment, they fragments are sunk as part of the kind of uh, process of making these things. But the item you're making will be, how should I say, it will be suitable for that particular area coming from. So, for example, if you're in the Bronze Age, it would likely be an item made of bronze. If you're in the Iron Age, you would make something made out. It's what you'd expect to find in a museum. But the point of this is it provides bonuses that are essentially permanent. Once you've made that item, those bonuses, you keep those bonuses for the rest of the time you're playing the game. However, if you miss an era because you rejoin the game later, there's no way to go back. You can't go back and make an item from the past because we're no longer in that era anymore. So this is a way for people who have been with us from the start to be able to show, hey, look, I'm one of the OGs. I have all these collections right back to the start. I have collection items right back to the Bronze Age, to the Neolithic Age. And it allows you to kind of, show and display to others in a really easy way that you have these things. And in addition to that, you get the bonuses, which is nice.
Yep, more bonuses is definitely nice. But then my question is, like, for example, let's say I join Civitas when it launches, and I start playing it, and I build a museum, and then start like working on the items that are required, and so I can build them and get the bonuses. But is that also tied to my account, because it is still on my land? So it's a museum. A museum is a building that is on my land. Does that mean if I sell my land, I'm actually transferring the ownership of the museum as well, or is the museum going to be moved around with me?
No, the museum will be moved with you. So when it comes to changing lands, we're kind of trying to make a very firm distinction between, is it part of the land or is it on the land? So part of the land is things like fissures and the actual resources and things. On the land are things like buildings. So when you move land, the buildings will go with you, but the fissures would not. So in this case, it's a building, it would go with you.
Okay, cool. So that means if anyone joins at the beginning and start working on these items and get these items, then they're gonna have like all these benefits, all these boosts and bonuses, all the way through when they go to the moon. They create spaceship.
Exactly. I mean, the bonuses, they're not meant to be game-breaking bonuses. This isn't a case of, hey, look, I've got all these bonuses and you don't, therefore I'm twice as fast at everything as you. They're not. But they are small bonuses, but they are the only source of these particular ones. And we are considering maybe potentially this being the only source of certain buffs. Again, this is still very early for what the bonuses actually are. But again, these are not game-breaking ones, but they're a great way of showing, again, that you've been around for a while. And again, if you hit every single kind of era and sub-era collection item, they'll add up over time.
Interesting. And just to reiterate, you will need fragments to create these items.
Correct. Yes.
From the beginning, like whether it's
Right.
actually in the Bronze Age, whether it's going to be Iron Age or any other.
Yes, exactly that. So if people haven't got to Rifts yet, by the time we move on to one of the eras, then the only way to make the collection item will be to use the fragments generated by the Chosen.
That's very nice. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Looking forward to seeing all this happen. That's a lot of information. These are all actually, I think like all this information that you give today, maybe not all, but at least 90% of them was alpha.
Good. I mean, we spent a long time talking about fragments for a reason, because
Yep.
we wanted to make sure we did them justice.
Yep. I mean, I think like in the past we had a document published for the community that only explained what, let's say, refined crystals are and like generally what fragments are. But this was actually pretty detailed, like what the actual usage of fragments going to be, and of course like crystals and so on and so forth.
We weren't happy with it either. That's why we went back to the drawing board, so to speak, to add more to these things.
So does that mean there maybe in the future there's going to be even more use for frags?
Oh yeah, definitely. As the game advances and we release new eras and new types of things and new types of content, new systems, yes, fragments will be used in those as well. But it will be very much dependent on the game state at the time. So if we have a player base who are actively, taking part in rifts and bringing in large amounts of fragments, then we'll make sure that there are more sinks for them. Because again, these are not meant to be basic resources. These aren't the kind of woods and stones that you have absolute loads of. These are meant to be high value items that you have low amounts of. So again, when you go to a rift, well, you're not going to come back with like 10 fragments from a rift. You might get a fragment. That's kind of like the rarity we're talking here. They are meant to be rare now and in the future as well. So if they ever get to a point where they're becoming too many of them, we will look to add additional syncs to it to keep them under control.
Okay, that's great. That's cool. So I have one last question I want to ask you. It's probably something that it's been talked about, but still could have an answer. But by the time we actually start, we will be able to start using these fragments and burning them. There's gonna be like hundreds of thousands of these fragments in circulation already in form of NFTs. So with the launching of the game, will players have a chance to burn their fragments for city token?
Undetermined.
Yeah. We don't have a proper answer.
Okay,
We don't know.
so TBD.
Yeah.
We're focusing more on the application of it, making sure that it's well seated in. That I mean, we want those original NFT or original chosen NFT holders to feel well rewarded for getting on board at the very outset of our project, and at the same time make sure that we've got diverse utility, which is something that we are looking at applying to every resource that that we're creating in Civitas. So yeah, that's just one question I don't think that we have a good answer for yet. We'll be making that determination at some point in the future, but not today.
Cool. Yep, not today, definitely. I mean, these are just questions. Any of these questions can have an answer that is going to be totally different in the future, but everything is subject to change. This is going to be my trademark for every podcast. Guys, just remember, every information can change. This is still a work in progress. The game is still under development. Right?
Yep, definitely.
Cool.
Yeah. What is that quote about? Something about great plans until the first shot is fired, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Indeed. But yeah, this was like a lot of information, new information for the community. So we will try to add all these I said fragments a lot now. I'm actually saying fragments. All these information into different Medium articles. For those who are not listening to the podcast, they can still read it through the TLDR podcast Medium shorts that we are actually working on, and we will announce it. And yep, thank you guys for answering all my questions. I'm sure there will be more questions that the community will ping you in on Discord, but
I'm looking forward to it. We'll have a focus session where we can answer some of those.
yeah, great. So thank you guys.
Yeah, so
All right.
for more things, there's even some stuff that we haven't touched on as well today. So you watch this space.
Stay tuned.
For sure, stay tuned. There's more to come, of course.
Yeah, of course. All right, guys.
Take care,
Cheers.
guys.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
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 Bye.